Was able to get in now.
Rabbi, I was going to say to you that earlier, I kept thinking maybe I should ask the co-host. I don't know why. For some reason, I was thinking. So never mind. No.
Problem. What happened was it wouldn't let me back in because it said the meeting was still in progress.
Right.
And it says it won't let you in till you close the meeting and so I had to close the meeting and then I went back in and had the wrong login when I went back in. So now it's set up. I apologize. I'm in a building with not always stable internet, although it generally works except when you want it to, when you need it to. So I was starting to talk about the Song of Sea, and I don't remember where it got cut off. Can't tell exactly. I was trying to talk about the problem of.
Yeah, hi. This is for Joe. Joe, to get back in, you have to enter the code, the meeting ID number, and I'll give it to you.
I'm in the other room. Hold on 1 second.
Okay. Yeah. So
I'll let Judy know.
Okay. So I started to talk about how when we come up with reality,
So
when we're a slave, everything is terrible.
Joe,
when we're free, it's
so
like everything is
in,
worse.
Jeff,
you have
mute
to
yourself.
go back to the meeting and log on again.
Yeah.
But it asked me for the meeting number, and I'll give you the number.
That way you can talk. That's it. Yeah. So Eric Fromm, I mentioned here, one of the students of Freud in the original Freud circle of psychoanalysts, had a book called The Escape from Freedom. And it is that people run away from freedom because it means responsibility for one's actions and taking responsibility for the consequences. And so we see constantly around the world, nations free themselves of a dictator or tyrant, go into some kind of freedom, and then everything falls back and they beg for a strong man to come and save them. When the Tsarist regime fell, the original regime that followed it was a democratic regime under Kerensky. It was very easily undermined by Lenin. The Germans had a very nice model of democracy, the Weimar Republic. It fell as disorder spread, and you got Hitler. The old Soviet Union fell. You had an attempt at democracy under Yeltsin, and because of corruption and the disorder and the mismanagement, you got Putin instead, and so on. Very common, very common. So freedom is a difficult task. And bitter.
Okay, Jeff, thanks for calling.
Okay. The food's not good, the water's not good, and they're dangerous enemies like Amalekites. That's the price of freedom. All right. So that's our theme. So since this is the Shabbat of song, I wanted to pull up something different, very different. And let me find it. Here we go. Go back to 1 second. Back to my music screen. That's it. This one. And skip 1 and skip 2. Wait a minute. Where is it? Skip me, or give me a second, because I had something very pretty and I don't know why it's not showing up when I wanted it.
Arriba.
This is it here. This is the reading of the Song of the Sea, done in Moroccan melody. So the introduction has the scene from, I guess, the 10 Commandments of the Red Sea. And now we go into
אז יסיר משה ובני ישראל את השיר הזאת לאדוני ויאמרו לאמור השירה לאדוני כי גאו גאה סוס ברוחבו רמה בים עושי וצנרתיה ויהי לי לישוע זה אלי בימבהו אלוקי אביו ורוממנו אדוני איש מלחמה אדוני שמו.
I want to stop 1 second. I wanted to do the blessings before this. Joe.
Yes.
Blessings. Do the Torah blessing introduction. Go ahead.
Okay. Baruch Hu Esadno Hamavorach.
Baruch Nevarach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Hanavarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Adonai Melech Olam. Asher Barhabonu Mikol Olamim. V'natan Lanu Es Torusoi. Baruch Atu Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. So that's it. Now I'm going to go back to the reading. It is in Moroccan. You see the transcript. Also, I don't know if this is you can see there's a tiny translation, and I'm going to assume it's Ladino and then transliteration. I guess based on the way it will be translated through Ladino text, because I'm not sure exactly what phonics system they're using in that. But we'll go ahead. Then we were at my little pointer is here showing us where we were about midway in this left column.
מרכבות פרו וקלו ירה וים ומכר סלי ספטו בהו בים סוף תאומוס יקג'ומו ירדו בנסולות כמו אבן ימינך אדוני נדרים וכוח ימינך אדוני תירץ אויב וברוב גאונך תהרוס קמך תשלח חרונך יאכל מוקקש וברוח אפיך נרמו מים נסבו חמו נדו נוסלים קפה ותאומות בלב ים אמר אויב ארדוף אזיק אחלק שלל תמלאם עונשי אריק הרבה תוני שמו ידי נשפת ברוחך כי שמו ים סללו כעופרת במים עדינים מי כמוך מעלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, נורא תהילות, אוסף אלה, נתית ימינך, תבלעמו הארץ, נהית וכזכה, המשהו גאלת, ניהלת ועושך, אל אמת קודשך, שמעו עמי נרגסום, הילחש יושב ופלשת, אז נבהלו, אלופי אדום, אלף מואב, יחזמו רעד, נמוגו כל יושבי הרנן תיפול עליכם אימתה בפחד בגדול צרוח הנמו כאבן עד יעבור עמך אדוני עד יעבור המשהו קניתה תביאמו ותתאמו בהר נחלתך מחום לשבטך פעלת אדוני מקדש אדוני כוננו ידיך אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד.
Okay. Now, I hope you enjoyed that reading. Captures the rhythm of the rhythm of the portion very well for us. We're going to go ahead now.
Rabbi, I have
Go ahead.
a question. Two things are kind of hidden, but somehow interesting. First, there is a rod for Moshe, and everything happens if he managed that rod. So somehow this rod has some kind of magic into it, and the Torah says it's the command of God. And the second thing is God doesn't act directly unless Moshe makes a sign. So these two things kind of hidden, but are interesting, at least for me.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. It's what is the word? The shevet. Shevet is the symbol of rule. So the shepherd's staff becomes the same word, becomes the word for the scepter of the king in later Hebrew. So Moses has the rod. It indicates that he's the leader. He is put in the position of the leader. He is in loco parenti. He is acting in the place of God, as God's representative on earth, in that sense. Yeah. So by holding out the rod, he's indicating, I have the authority of leadership given to me from God. That's the way we would say that. Well, it's very interesting how later on in the Haggadah, Moses would be erased from the Haggadah. Leadership taken away from Moses, given back to God. That's very strong, very strong. Yeah, good point. So now let's go ahead. Welcome, Lauren. Shabbat Shalom. Glad to have you join us. And we're going to go ahead. Okay, myself, and then not like that's it. So there we go. All right, that's it. That's right. That's it. Okay, I think this is right. Good. So we have the Mishaberach list. We pray Mishaberach Avotenu Avraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov Serach v'Rachel B'Leah. May the Holy One who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Becca, Rachel, and Leah, bless and heal the following: Joe Alexander, Moisey Kelchik, Ronnie Duran, Harriet Levins, Moisey Ben Manya, Barbara Mormon, Judy Arkalai, Richard Zeller, Judy Smith, Samuel Smith, Robert Drata, Roger Rosen, Rachel Flalo, Susan Tuchman, Inga Boos, Liba Batsara, Herb Mormon, Hannah Sarah, Leah Bat Rachel, Hannah Sarah Bat Kayla Alta, Sophie, the friend of Judy Arkalai, Hannah Batsara, Irina Sepian, Alan Whalen, Laban Masha Ben Sarah, Jennifer Fraser, Yael Ben Chana, Shoshana Batsar, Louis Jason, Erna Nissan, and all those who have been afflicted by the COVID-19 virus. And let's go ahead and just give me the names. Joe, would you go ahead first?
Shlomo ben Moshe Wolf.
Shlomo Moshe Wolf.
Shima Bahar Lev.
Simitar Lev.
Ron Terhar Lev.
Ron Terhar Lev.
Susan Feinberg.
Susan Feinberg.
Sharon Lipman.
Sharon Lipman.
Esther Rachel Batsiva.
Esther Rachel Batsiva.
Leba Moshe Ben Sarah.
Leba Moshe Ben Sarah.
And Shlomo Ben Lazar.
Shlomo Ben Lazar. And
Mazal Lereya.
Lemazal Lereya.
Rachel Batventura.
Rachel Batventura.
David Asherson.
David Asherson.
Tito and Gabi Gorodischer.
Tito and Gabi Gorodischer.
Ronald Rothman.
Ronald Rothman.
Wendy Keller.
Wendy Keller. Any others? We wish for all of them a speedy healing, both in body and in mind. Hakadosh Baruch Hu yishlach lehem refuah shlema, refuat nefesh, refuat haguf. Shabbat ha'im elizok. Amen. May the healing come speedily to them and to all who are ill, in the house of Israel of all people. And let us say Amen. And let's go ahead. We're going to sing this together. The Mishaberach. I have it up here on the screen for us. And let's join in. I'll enlarge it even for us. Let's see. Okay, a little bit. There we go. Let's join in. Mishaberach Avoteinu. Mekol habracha le'imotenu. May the source of strength who bless the ones before us. Help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishaberach imotenu. Mekol habracha le'imotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shelema. Their renewal of body, their renewal of spirit. And let us say, Amen, Amen. Now we'll go ahead. Let me see where we are. on my screen. Okay, we go back here to my selection. We're going to go to our Haftarah for today. The same theme of song, it is the account of Devorah. And so there's a very long Haftarah. It starts with the actual narrative account in the book of Judges, who she was, prophetess among the children of Israel, and the battle, and that the enemy, the general of the enemy, flees to the tent of the Kenite Hever HaKeni, who is either neutral or in an alliance with the Canaanite king, figures it's a safe place, and he is killed there on the spot by the wife, by Yael. So now we have the poetic version, which is the dramatic version, also language reflecting an earlier period of ancient Israel, similar to the language of the Song of the Sea, certain of its phrases and so on. And here we have, I would say, is a feminist manifesto, because this is how it goes out. It starts out with Vatashad Dvorah Ubarak. Now it's Dvorah and Barak sing, but it's not Barak is singing. She's really the one singing, right? She's doing the song. Barak, it may be not but maybe with Barak Abinah, because she's the one who's controlling him. And talks about those who are ready to volunteer and those who are sitting on the sidelines, afraid to join in. And uses language similar to the language of the Song of the Red Sea, where God is fighting in the heavens, and the floods come down and wash away the Canaanite chariots. And if any of you have ever seen flash floods in a desert, you understand how powerful they can be. Flash floods in deserts can pick up entire highways and move them over several hundred feet, for example. I've seen that. So finally, she comes to the end and the actual story of how the wicked enemy is killed. And he comes into the tent of Yael. We're just going to skip down. And she contrasts Meroz, who stood by the wayside, did not help, with Yael. Blessed among women be Yael, the wife of Hever HaKeni, the Hever of the Kenite tribes. Among the women of the tents, she shall be blessed. Right? All those women sitting in tents, she's the one who knew what to do. What does it say? Mayim shal, he asked for water, she gave him milk. And gave him a bowl, a mighty bowl of the curds of the milk, right? So out of her way. The rabbis read in this, and some commentators read in this, that milk is a kind of a seductive entity. And so he falls at her feet, and she takes the tent pin, runs it through his head, and he falls. And in the language, Ben Raglea Karan Nafal Shachav, between her legs he falls. What's he doing between her legs? There's a hint in this that she is seducing him to weaken him. That's the hint behind it. But she uses her power to destroy the enemy. Then we have the contrast, the mother of Sisera. This is how civilized women are, right? Sisera's civilization, the big city guy. Big civilization is the women think about the spoils of war, right? She's looking, why is he late? And her women say, well, they're finding the scarves, they're finding the beautiful cloths and so on, and they're finding rachamatayim for every man, a womb for every male. What does it mean, a womb? Women to rape. So this is how the noble woman looks at her fellow woman, as opposed to the way the women of the tent, right? Independent women, women who control their lives, look and handle things, right? Two different views. And so this is, we may say, is a very feminist perception. The woman is the one who takes charge. The woman is the one who takes control. The woman who does not see the other woman is just another piece to be used and abused. Right? Very different perspectives. That is our Haftarah. So I'm going to just read the first lines of the Song of Devorah. for this day. Vatashad Devaral Barak ben Avina Bayamul Lemor Bifra Praod B'Yisrael Bitnadev Am Bachu Adonai Shamu Melachim Azinu Roznim Anochi Laranai Anochi Ashira Azamel Laranai Lehei Yisrael Aranai B'Tzecha Miseir B'Tzalcha Misde Edom Eretz Rasha Gam Shamayim Natafu Gam Avim Natafu Mayim Harim Nazlu Mipnei Aronai Zes Sinai Mipnei Aronai Lehei Yisrael Bimei Shamga Ben Anat Bimei Yael Chavdalu Arachot Ochei Nitivot Yelchu Arachot HaKarkalot Chadlu Perazon B'Yisrael Chadelu Em B'Yisrael Ad Shekamti Dvorah Em B'Yisrael. Okay, and now we go ahead. Let's shrink this one down.
Rabbi,
And go ahead.
I have also another question. In the song of the reeds, the latest half of the song kind of talk of a very far away future from the point they were. So actually, that suggests that that song was not written at that time, was written post the facts.
Well, they have some things in there. Hold on, I've got to get my back up. It disappeared on us. Yeah, let me get that back up for us. So yeah, all these things, the final writings are always later, but where's the tradition, the poetic tradition that precedes it? There's an oral tradition before it's written down. And we know this, for example, Homer. There's an oral tradition that whoever put Homer together used. So of these, also, these are oral traditions put down. And so as they're being recorded, there is, the question about Yoshvei Palashit or the Fe'edom. Well, are they there in place yet or not at that time, right? So you'll always find some anachronism in these. Right? Shakespeare writes his Julius Caesar, and he talks about the clock chiming away. There's no clock in the time of Julius Caesar. His record of the Julius Caesar, the assassination, is a very accurate record based on Roman records. But what he's done is he's written it language, right, that is of a later day. So we find that, yeah. So again, it's the Torah is using language from the time that people would recognize, right, as being put together. All these, the final rendition takes time to put together. But it does not, the good question is, well, is it the fact that there are variations, also variations in the text? Does that mean that it's all made up of whole cloth? No, it is that rather these variations themselves indicate some of the changes that go on over history, over the course of history, but reflect something very ancient and very accurate. There's a good question about the historicity. There is a question about when is the Exodus itself, and there's always been a tendency to tie it in with the times of Ramses II, who is around 1200 or 1100, even some of this 1100. There's now a suggestion that actually it is far earlier, if we tie the timing correctly, the time in which the Hyksos are driven from the land of Egypt, and the pharaohs of Joseph and the pharaohs of the Exodus are Hyksos. Hyksos meaning they are themselves Northwest Semites who have settled in northern and conquered northern Egypt. So they're the conquerors of northern Egypt. Egypt was split, southern Egypt and the northern Egypt. Actually, that's what turns out. The Hebrew tribes subject to the ruling class. The ruling class also from the Northwest Semites, but no longer Northwest Semites in the culture. They're fully Egyptianized. The Hebrews, and this is the theory, as war is going on, the Hyksos send everybody out. They are defending themselves heavily. They're going to be defeated. They also run and are defeated in the sea. That's a possibility. So actually, the event is actually from Egyptian records, and it would be backed by some of the much later Egyptian records that time the Exodus with other events going on in Egypt, much older than archaeologists or historians today tend to believe. But again, as I had a teacher who would always ask us when we would talk about Talmud and Midrash and so on, well, historically, at this happened, and he says, was you there, Charlie? All of this is speculation, reading back, attempts to read back with what we know. All right, this is also.
Rabbi, I've got a question.
Go ahead.
Is year one the Exodus when Moses? Is this what year one is? At the beginning of the Exodus?
Year one, no, nobody ever counts year one from the Exodus. That's interesting. I mean, Jewish tradition, we're counting from when? We're counting from the, when do we count from? We count always from Bereshit, from creation, except even creation itself, there's a question, how are we claiming creation? Based on what? Right? So even there, we don't, and basically it's much later on that we have attempts to date. Usually dating attempts are from kings, reigns of kings. I'll give you an example. Just escaped me. Even with the dating of the Exodus, in one place it says 400 years after. One place it says 430 years after. Does it mean 400 years after the time of Joseph coming into Egypt? Or is it that 400 years since the time of God's vision to Abraham to the Exodus, which is the actual one, right? So it's very difficult to pinpoint what did they have in mind. And again, the problem is, was you there, Charlie? We're taking it on the basis of, we can only deal with what we have in the text in front of us. Everything else becomes speculation. Well, I said that this is usually we turn ourselves to America, prayer for America. Monday is not only Tu B'Shvat, but also Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And so I pull up a phrase from
even though
his great
we face
a sermon, really a sermon.
Even though
we think of it as a sermon. Somebody went through that speech at the Lincoln Memorial and pointed out, I saw this, every phrase is a biblical phrase. It is a combination of quotes from the Bible or structures and paraphrases using biblical cadence. And what King did correctly was appeal to the morality of the American people. And these phrases echoed in their hearts. And that was what moved things in his day.
We face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream.
Give me 1 second.
It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. That one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream.
Rabbi, you're muted.
Phone, I apologize. My phone started to play music all of a sudden. It gets a ghost in the phone. You ever sense this, that sometimes the phones play by themselves? I'm never sure if they're listening to us when we don't know. Sorry. But the very last screen image showed Rabbi Abraham Yoshua Heschel marching there at Selma. And one of the complaints about the movie Summer was that they airbrushed him out. No, they didn't airbrush, but they didn't show any connection with Heschel, even though they were working hand in hand all the way along. And the movie also looked at it, did not point out how much King's power came from his appeal to religion. Still meant something in those days, religion. Today, they're nuns. Where does that power, where does that moral power come from? So, may that come to fruition in our day.
Rabbi, we could have a long discussion as to why we no longer appeal to religion, because it's not only that those who are in the movement have, the younger generation have sort of moved away from religion, but also what the idea of what religion and how it's being weaponized and how especially among the Christians, how it's changed from the Southern Baptist to the evangelical movement to all of these things. People don't feel welcomed in religion anymore.
Well, it's very interesting. See, there's a great contradiction we have in the development of religion in modern times, in which there are millions and millions of very liberal, open religious denominations and movements, and yet they're not attracting anybody. And it has been the more Bible Belt fundamentalists that have been attracting. So it's hard to know. It's like an either or, that either you don't.
But it's not just that. I don't think it's just that. The ones who have the biggest megaphone right now are not necessarily welcoming or espousing the actual tenets of what religion is supposed to mean, of humanity and of kindness and that neighbor. As a Jewish faith, we are supposed to treat the stranger among us and all of that. It seems to be missing, and I think that is, I talk to friends who are Christian, and especially Black friends. They do not feel that religion as it is in today's world has any message for them.
I think I'm going to guess, I think that the Black churches still do speak to the Black community, still carry a clout.
But they don't have the big megaphone. That's what I'm trying to say to you. It doesn't matter.
Catholic Church has the most powerful megaphone. Generally, except on abortion, I'd say except on the issue of abortion, they're generally very liberal. They have the biggest megaphone possible. Yeah, but you don't hear them the same way. The truth is, in the evangelical movement, there are some split ups going on. Also, it's very interesting. It's not all monolithic. Also, yeah. So that's a long discussion. That is, it's an important.
I know, but I only say that because I know the movie, because I've watched the movie, and I have issues with the movie also. And you're right, it does not pay enough attention to the connection between the church and religion, and not just the church, but also Jewish participants in the movement and others, and even women. To be honest with you, it doesn't pay enough attention to or give enough credit to those aspects of the movement and what the movement meant. It's a lot of people who've been washed out, that move in particular. But and I wonder if it's because what the movie is basically a commercial venture, and what it has to speak to is what people will see today as opposed to being historically correct.
Yeah. Very interesting.
I don't know what anybody else thinks.
No, interesting. What you talk about women also, looking back in the 60s, early 70s, where the feminist movement took off was when women who were involved in the hippie, SDS, yippie, and all that, primarily with the SDS, they discovered that they were being treated by supposedly the awake and the revolutionaries as the ones who bring the coffee to the meeting.
Right.
And I said, we're not taking that. And that was what spurred things on. So, this question, women, Rosa Parks is the one that stands out.
But long before her, there were women who were, if you go to Fannie Mae and her ilk, even before Rosa Parks, those women were totally wiped out. And Fannie Mae Hamer, who more than Fannie Mae Hamer. So, when she finally stood up and said, no, I'm not taking this. So there's so many issues and so many things wrong with the movie itself.
There's always a problem with Hollywood movies when they try to be documentaries and the artist gets carried away with trying to get one storyline. The artist I think the director is a woman also. I believe so.
No, wasn't it that fellow from England?
Selma, I think so.
No, I thought Selma was that chap from England.
I think there's a woman. But I think she tried to address some of the complaints afterwards. So let's go ahead. It's a very good issue you brought up. Very good. Let's go in with our prayer for the people of Israel. Avinu Sheba Shamayim Tzu Yisrael V'Goalo Barech Et Medinat Yisrael Eshit Tzmicha Gulatenu Hagen Aleha Bevrat Chasdecha Fros Aleha Sukat Shilomecha Shlachocha V'Mitcha Asher Sareh B'Yotzeha Takneim Beitzah Tova Milfanecha. Strengthen the hands of those who defend our holy land. Avinu Sheba Shamayim. Deliver them and crown their efforts with triumph. Avinu Sheba Shamayim. Tzu Yisrael V'Goalo. Bless our land with peace, O God, and heavens with lasting joy, and let us say, Amen. Avinu Sheba Shamayim. Tzu Yisrael V'Goalo. Barech Et Medinat Yisrael. Eshit Tzmicha Gulatenu. Hagen Aleha. Bevrat Chasdecha. Ufros Aleha. Sukat Shilomecha. V'noma Amen. Amen. Now we're going to return the Torah to the Ark. We're going to wrap up our service and go into our Tu B'Shvat celebration. So
hallelujah.
Pick up our virtual Torah. Hold on. Pick up our virtual Torah. And get ready. So we chant Hallelujah. Shem Adonai. Kines Gav Shemo Levado. Odo Leretz V'Shamayim. Vayarem Eren Le'amo. Tehila Lecho Chasi Dahav. Livnei Yisrael Am Keroba. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Mizmor L'David. Kavul Adonai B'nei Elim. Kavul Adonai Kavod. Kavul Adonai Kavod. Shemot Nishtach Adonai. L'mayim Yakvod Yirim. Adonai Mayim Rabim. Kol Adonai Ba'adah. Adonai Be'adar. Kol Adonai Shaber Aradi. Shaber Adonai Tazeh Havadon. Yakren Kumegevam Sirion Kemo Ben Reilim. Kol Adonai Chazeh Lamodesh. Kol Adonai Yachem Ebar. Yachil Adonai B'Makadesh. Kol Adonai Yachole Layolot. Yachsof Yorechol Kulo Omer Kavod. Adonai Lemamon Yasha, Vayeshev Adonai Melech Leolam, Adonai Adonai Barech Et Amo Vashalom. We place the Torah in the Ark, figuratively, bid farewell. It's Chayim Hi, Lemachazikim Ba, V'tom Cheha Me'usha, Deracheha Dacheinu Am, V'chol Netivoteha Shalom, Ashihi Beheinu Adonai, Elecha V'nashuva, Chadesh, Chadesh Yameinu, Chadesh Yameinu, Eker. Now we're going to go back to, there we go here on the screen to
En Keloheinu, En Kadonenu, En Kemalkeinu, En Kemoshienu, Mi Keloheinu, Mi Kadonenu, Mi Kemalkeinu, Mi Kemoshienu, Nodel Eloheinu, Nodel Adonenu, Nodel Makenu, Nodel Moshienu, Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Makenu, Baruch Moshienu, Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Makenu, Atahu Moshienu, Atahu Sheiktiru Avotenu, Lefanecha et Ketoret Hasamim.
continue with Aleinu. Put the screen up a little bit bigger and go ahead to Aleinu together. And join in. Aleinu l'shabach ladon hakol tekuru l'yotzeya breshit shelo sanakei haratzot v'lo samanut mishpachot adama shelo samchakenu kohem v'gor aleinu kechol amonam v'anachnu kovim u'mishkachavim u'modim lifnei melech malchei hamachim hakadosh baruch hu Yot hashamayim v'yosei Ushchinat uzav begavei meromim Hu Eloheinu Eino Emes Malkeinu
Eino.
I think I missed my lines here.
Yeah.
And we go ahead the very ending here. V'ne'emar together.
V'ne'emar V'hayim Adonai Melech ha'aretz
V'yomahu yeh Adonai echad U'shemo So we come now to the Monas Kaddish and pull up the yard sites. Give me a second. I'm going to pull this up. This week, one of our dear older members passed away, Shirley Marco. And her daughter is on the line. I think Barbara. Are you
Yes,
on the line?
I'm here.
So. Yes. Is your sister on the line also, or
On the phone.
on the phone? Okay.
On the phone.
Yeah. So. Okay. Good. Okay. Good. So, those of you who remember, she used to sit in the back, very quiet in the back, and there's a very nice, warm presence. The funeral is going to be tomorrow. I have her name on a Kaddish list now. We also had Jean Deborah Robin, who's a friend of my daughter-in-law's parents' family, and although others who passed away this year: Irma Smith, Miriam Bodie, Ilanit Norman Bat Isaac, Elaine Goldsmith, and Margaret Zadok. And the artists of those who passed away in previous weeks at this time of the year, in previous years at this time, Louis Young and Martin Salick. May their memories be for a blessing. May their souls be bound up in the bond of eternal life. Those who are reciting the Kaddish with me, I have it up here on the screen. Please join in. Yitkadal, Yitkadash, Shemei Rabba. Bioma Divra Finite, Biam Lif Malchute, Chaychon V'Amechon, V'Chayed L'Chol Beit Yisrael, Magalav Zman Kari Bimru Amen, Yehi Shmei Rabban Borach L'Olam L'Maya, Yiborach V'Yishtabach, V'Yipa'ar V'Shemar V'Yitnaseh, V'Yitadar V'Yitalev V'Yithala Shmei D'Kudsha Berichu, Le'ela Min Kol Birchata V'Shirata, Tushbechata V'Nechmata, Amel V'Amar Bimru Amen, Yehi Shlom Rabba Min Shemaya, Chayim Aleinu V'Akoyse B'Amen, Ose Shalom B'Mama, V'Yaseh Shalom Aleinu V'Akoyse B'Mama. Amen.
Amen.
The one who makes peace in the heavens above, grant peace unto us and unto all Israel, all people. Let us all say Amen.
Amen.
And now we'll just wrap up this part of our service with Adon Olam and Shabbat Shira is also the Shabbat of song. It is a Shabbat of dance. Miriam is the one who leads the women in dance. And so here is a dance version to accompany Adon Olam. And if you remember it, I'll just put the dance up and you can sing along with it. For Shabbat Shira, for the Shabbat of song, and the Shabbat of Miriam dancing with the timbrel and taking the women out is a very, very appropriate ending for this part of the service. And just for 1 second, I'm going to stop the share, just greet everybody. Okay, to everybody here. Shabbat Shalom and welcome on board. I'm happy to have you all here. And we're going to go now into the Tu B'Shvat segment of our service. So this one is just for fun. That's its real emphasis, feel good. And we should not be ashamed of having things that just feel good. We do a lot of things that are designed to give us guilt. Once in a while, we should do things that make us just feel good. So this Shabbat is a make us feel good Shabbat. I'm going to put this back up and move my screen around a second. Okay, and where am I here? Okay, stop all of this. We're almost ready. And here. View, I want to view. I'd like to view it. Reading view. There we go. So now, this is Rosh Hashanah, La'ilanot, the New Year of the Trees. It is Monday. It also happens to be Dr. Martin Luther King Day. So the idea of the tree blossoming, in particular the almond tree, the first one to blossom as the winter begins, is just barely to soften, but we're a little bit early in the cycle this year. Usually Tu B'Shvat comes a little bit later in most cycles, but it's about in time with the almond tree blossoming, right? The sense of rebirth, of renewal. There we go ahead. A little introduction. Very good to be Jewish because you get 6 New Years, right? Six, count them. Rosh Hashanah for the fall, the cycle of festivals starting with the spring, actually, in the Bible. Counting of the age of cattle comes at the end of the summer. Counting of the age of trees is the end of not really the end of winter. It's just as the winter peaks, promising spring. And then for fun, we have January 1st for the secular New Year's, and we've got Chinese New Year's if you're in the right neighborhood. So where does it come from? In the Mishnah, we have this listing of 4 New Years, gives us our listing. Using Elul, the month before Rosh Hashanah, for tithing of animals. Nisan is the cycle of the kings, anointing of kings, and their throne years counted from Nisan, and festivals. Biblically, festivals counted from Nisan, from the spring Pesach and on. So the Rosh Hashanah now, what is Rosh Hashanah, is the 7th month of the cycle. And then we come into the question of Tishrei, 1st of Tishrei, New Year for the years, right? So since then we've counted, since the biblical times, since rabbinic times, counting our years from Tishrei, the fall, and the Shmitot and Yovelot, the sabbatical years and the Jubilee years, and counting planting and vegetables. Somebody noticed something unusual. When are we planting, according to this? B'cha b'Tishrei, l'nitiyah. The planting of what? Planting of trees. At what time? In the fall. Wait a minute. What do we do on Tu B'Shvat? Usually, what do we celebrate? What do kids do? They go out and plant trees. But it's not time for planting trees. It's time for the blossoming, the first blossomings. And there's a whole reason behind it. It has to do with the renewal of Jewish life in the land of Israel at the beginning, very beginning of the previous century, and a member of the Teachers Association then decided he needed something special for the children to celebrate the return to the land of Israel. And he said, well, this date for planting of trees is always just before school starts, so that's no good. I can't do anything. Let's move it to another holiday. And he said, let's pick Tu B'Shvat. There's nothing to do with plantings. And plant trees. And that's where it started. So, Niv Shvat, we have Tu B'Shvat, subject to dispute. It should be the first. Wait 1 second, let me just go back. Should be the first of Shabbat, which is the month in the dead of winter. And that's according to Shammai. But of course, Hill says on the 15th thereof, and he has his different versions as to why. It has to do with when the sap begins to climb up the trees and how much time one needs to have the wood dry for the sacrifices at Pesach time. And what do we have here about trees? There's a famous line in Deuteronomy about the command to plant trees. No, Leviticus, sorry. When you are supposed to come to the land, natatim kol eitz machal, you shall plant the first tree, araltim orlato. You regard the first few years as orla, as something that is forbidden, like in the same word that we have for the skin that is removed at circumcision. Right? It must be removed before you can go to it. And so the first 3 years, that fruit it's uncircumcised fruit. Then in the 4th year, all the fruit set aside to celebrate in Jerusalem or the sanctuary, whatever that would have been at that time. And then in the 5th year, do you use it for your general produce? right? And Lord your God. That's where we have this cycle of planting trees, the obligation to plant trees. And so the rabbis asked this interesting question. We're told that a human being is supposed to act in a godly manner, walk in God's paths, follow your God. It's a phrase from Psalms, the Lechem B'drachav, to walk in God's path. Now, how can a human being actually follow God's path? Or you go follow his footsteps? You can't physically. So the comment is, understand that since creation, God has been involved in planting trees, as he planted the garden in Eden, right? In other words, world creates itself, or is continually being renewed. The planting of tree being a symbol of renewal. And these trees come up when everything is good without us doing anything. God's planting them for us. So therefore, when you come into the land, you should engage only in what? In planting trees. In other words, in the act of bringing trees, making the world green, this way, we're acting in a godlike manner. So some Tu B'Shvat customs, or go to a poem, not a Jewish poem, but many of you are familiar with it, Joyce Kilmer. Got some almond trees in the background. Almond trees in particular associated with this season. It's the first tree to show blossoms. The word for almond in Hebrew, shaked, which means powerful and determined. It's the first one to show its blossoms in the cold of, or the end of the winter. Right? We're in the midst of the winter in Israel. So we've got this beautiful poem, many of you are familiar with it, by Joyce Kilmer. I think that I shall never see a poem lovely as a tree whose hungry mouth is pressed against the earth's sweet flowing breast, a tree that looks at God all day and lifts her leafy arms to pray, a tree that may in summer wear a nest of robins in her hair, on whose bosom snow has lain, who intimately lives with rain. And the last lines that everybody knows, poems are made by fools like me, but only God can make a tree. So a little bit of more stories, going back to how Tu B'Shvat changed over the centuries, because the original Tu B'Shvat was marking the collection of wood to be used in the altar at Pesach time. Sanctuary was destroyed. It got a new life 4 centuries ago when Jews were returning to the land of Israel. They invited by the Turkish Sultan, the Sultan Suleiman, Suleiman the Magnificent, who understood that the Quran promised the land of Israel to the Jews. And he understood that they should be there. If he is going to be the leader of the Muslims, the Jews should be in their place. And he invited Jews to return. And they celebrated by creating a Seder to mark the liberation of the land from bondage. They saw this as the first signs of a future exodus, a future liberation, a future messianic day. And they took the exodus of Egypt and turned it into a platform for the Seder of Pesach, of Tu B'Shvat, I'm sorry. So instead of matzah, you'd use fruit. And as the Seder's 4 cups of wine, they would introduce 4 kinds of wine, a white, then a white with red wine, then a red with white wine, and then an all red wine. So to show the transition of the seasons, winter, spring, fall, summer, right? All the seasons going through. I don't think I got them in order, but that sounds good. Winter, fall, winter, spring, summer, fall. Okay, we go in that order. Or fall, winter, spring. Okay, that's it. So I was going to bring a bottle of wine to show and a bag of dried nuts. You're going to have to provide your own fruits for this. And the idea was that as each time we had a different type of wine, and we would do different sorts of fruits. So there would be fruits with hard shells to indicate the world of reality, which we have to crack through very hard to get what is good, like nuts, walnuts, and then the next level, fruits that had a soft peel that would be easy, like an apple can be peeled away, a banana can be peeled away. The world of the forces that shape our world, and then finally the next level, which is that which can be almost completely consumed, like a grape you can take. It's just little seeds that don't get in the way, and that's the level in which God operates in the forces of the universe. And then the final one, which is God, which is invisible and undefinable, so there is no fruit to describe. That's how it progresses. So we'll go and have a little visit of Israel first, or some different video clips to give us a little Tu B'Shvat entertainment. Here we go, visit of Israel. little music in the background. There we go. So another connection to trees, in this line in Deuteronomy about not going to war against the trees. Our fights are between human beings. The nature around us needs to be protected from our own depredation. So even when we're engaged in a war, and presumption is in Deuteronomy, we're engaged in wars either of preemptive defense or defense in the case of attack. And so it talks about, well, when you do come to a city to capture it and you have a long siege, do not destroy the trees around it. It talks particularly about the fruit-bearing trees, particular. It says, you eat of the trees, but don't destroy them. And then a beautiful quotation says, keep is the tree like a human being can run away into his walls, into the walls of the fortress. The tree cannot run away. And the rabbis later on twist it around and kind of say, as a question mark, is the tree like a human being? The tree is like a human being. Don't attack the tree because the human being is like a tree. The tree is like a human being. Okay? Twist it, turned it around, turned it upside on its head. All right? You would treat the tree like you'd respect the human being. Now, I said there are different cups of wine. So we would begin with a cup of white wine. Again, I'm sorry I don't have any wine to offer you. But we would have a blessing for the guy. Oh, there's a little background noise if somebody has. Somebody, please.
Rabbi, just mute everyone.
Let's do that. Okay. I'm going to just politely mute all. Okay, there we go. That's it. Okay, I apologize. Sometimes it's background noise. So, is there a blessing for a tree? Remember Fiddler on the Roof? There's a scene where the guy comes to the rabbi and says, is there a blessing for everything? Is there a blessing for tsar? So the question is there a blessing for a tree? Story here. You can follow along with me. Man traveling through the desert. He's hungry and thirsty. Comes upon a tree bearing luscious fruit and shade, water. He eats the fruit, drinks the water, rests under the shade. And when he was about to leave, he turns to the tree and says, well, tree, with what should I bless you? Should I bless you with fruit that is sweet, or your fruit is already sweet? Should I bless you that your shade be plentiful? Your shade is plentiful. That a spring of water should run beneath you? Well, there is a spring of water already beneath you. So one thing which I will bless you, may it be God's will that all the trees planted from your seeds shall be like you. Okay, so there's the blessing for a tree. May the fruits of that tree, generations to come, be just as good. Let's see, next. There we go. So now, again, a little bit of music. We'll sing with Sol and Nina Simone, Eretz Zavat Chalav, description in the Bible, a land flowing with milk and honey. The biblical honey being actually the fruit of the date palm. Nina Simone was the inspiration for Shlomo Karlebach. She mentored him back in the days when. So here's Nina Simone. And go ahead. Some more things about fruits in the order of the eating. We have, as I mentioned, hard-shelled fruits, thick skins like nuts or oranges, things that take an effort to peel through. So here's a song about one of those fruits. You have to really fight with it to get the fruit out of it, the pomegranate. So open it up, take it apart, get the little seeds one by one. So this famous poem, the pomegranate tree has emanated its fragrance between Jericho and the Dead Sea. My fortress, your remnant, regiment returned from patrol. My innocent, your lover returned from wanderings. Treasures of Ophir and the fragrance of Gilad, the chariots I send you, girl. Thousands of songs will hang from your shield from the Nile to the Jordan. And so, did I have it? Go back. Yeah, Eitz Harimon. That's it. Here we go. The Eitz Harimon. There we have it in front of us. A picture of the pomegranate. Very popular plant on ancient coins from Israel. Must have been maybe the major fruit plant of Israel, one of the major fruit plants. And for this, the second cup of wine, a blush, right? A little of the reddish tinge to the wine. Eitz Harimon Natan Recho.
עץ הרימון נתן ריחו, בים המלח לי ריחו, שב חומתי גדודך מנדוד, שב תמתי דודך מדוד, שב חומתי גדודך מנדוד, שב תמתי דודך מדוד. אוצרות אופיר וצרי גלעד, רכב מצרים שללתי לך בר, אלף הזמרת ללך מגן, מן היאור עד הירדן. את כלולה מכל כלות, את דגולה בני דגלות, שתיים עינייך כשתיים יונים, וכל קולך פעמונים. שתיים עינייך כשתיים יונים, וכל קולך פעמונים. לך התרועות, לך הזרים, לך כל שלטי הגיבורים, מליך אל אלף ומרבבה, לבבי מת מאהבה. שב אל הקשת, שב החץ, שב הרימון אל ראש העץ, לך ואלייך החיל יוחל, בואי כלה ירד הליל. לך ואלייך החיל יוחל, בואי כלה ירד הליל.
Singer. That was okay. Now we're going to go back. Okay, move our way forward. Enjoy the wine. Now, just going forward, move the next level was fruits that had no Shabbat, they had pits inside. And that would be like cherries, olives, and dates. That's what they would use in the Seder back in Tzfat. And speaking of olives, then here's a song for olives. I will plant in the desert a cedar, myrtle, and an olive tree. I'll place juniper in the wilderness, the pine and the box tree together. Aten b'meban et ha'erez.
אתן במדבר את הארז,
שיטה וידז וצ'מן, אשים בערבה ברוש, אשים בערבה ברוש, אתן במדבר את הארז, שיטה וידז וצ'מן, אשים בערבה ברוש, אשים בערבה ברוש, אתן במדבר את הארז, שיטה וידז וצ'מן, אשים בערבה ברוש, ברוש תידר תישור יחדיו, אתן במדבר את הארז, שיטה וידז וצ'מן, אשים בערבה ברוש, אשים בערבה ברוש, אתן במדבר את הארז, שיטה וידז וצ'מן, אשים בערבה ברוש, אשים בערבה ברוש, אתן במדבר את הארז, שיטה וידז וצ'מן, אשים בערבה ברוש, ברוש תידר תישור יחדיו, אתן במדבר את הארז, אתן במדבר את הארז, אתן במדבר את הארז, שיטה וידז וצ'מן, אשים בערבה ברוש, ברוש תידר תישור יחדיו, אתן במדבר את הארז, אתן במדבר את הארז, אתן.
And there we go. Move forward now. The next level of fruits are those that one could eat whole with only small seeds in them. And that would be like apples, pears. And so the song for songs like The Apple Tree, Nadilan, Blossom O Tree. And here's a song by the folk group called The Weavers. Let me see if that's the one that I picked up after all. Sometimes some of these songs disappeared after I made this original setting, but a tree sways, the wind caresses its top and kisses it. There in the garden, my beauty picked an apple, and her laughter was ivory. If only I were a tree and she the wind, and she were to kiss me, she might pick me up a graceful apple. When will the day be over? And I shall call out, my beauty, come down for a stroll in my garden. Tapuach nad ilan samatolitef haruach. Again, I'm not sure if this is from the Weaver's version, but we'll put it up. Let's see whose version it was. The Israeli version of the Weaver's version. There we go. So our land of Israel is not a land of Israel without the date palm. Psalms compares the righteous person to a date tree. Sadiq Tamar Yifrach, the righteous man flourished like the palm tree, thrived like a cedar in Lebanon. So I had at one time a dance. I decided to switch it. That's why it says here how they dance it. And I said, well, we all know Sadiq Tamar. That one we know. And you know the dance for Sadiq Tamar Yifrach. But I said, let me see if I can find a different Sadiq Tamar. So went to this one. So here are the words Sadiq Tamar Yifrach. And we go ahead.
צדיק כתמר יפרח, כארז בלבנון יסגה. צדיק כתמר יפרח, כארז בלבנון יסגה. שתולים בבית השם, בחצרות אלוקינו יפריחו, עוד ינובון בשיבה. שנים ורעננים יהיו, להגיד כי ישר השם צורי ולא עוולת בוי. תאי נה נה נאי נה נאי, תאי נה 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 נאי, אוי נאי נה נה נאי נה נאי, תאי נה 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 נאי. צדיק כתמר יפרח, כארז בלבנון יסגה. צדיק כתמר יפרח, כארז בלבנון יסגה. שתולים בבית השם, בחצרות אלוקינו יפריחו, עוד ינובון בשיבה. שנים ורעננים יהיו, להגיד כי ישר השם צורי ולא עוולת בוי. תאי נה נה נאי נה נאי, תאי נה 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 נאי, תאי נה נה נאי נה נאי, תאי נה 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 נאי. צדיק כתמר יפרח, כארז בלבנון יסגה. צדיק כתמר יפרח, כארז בלבנון יסגה. שתולים בבית השם, בחצרות אלוקינו יפריחו, עוד ינובון בשיבה. שנים ורעננים יהיו, להגיד כי ישר השם צורי ולא עוולת בוי. יחד תאי נה נה נאי נה נאי, 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 אוי נה 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 נאי, תאי נה נה נאי נה נאי, תאי נה נה נאי נה נאי, תאי נה נה נאי נה נאי, תאי נה 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 נאי. צדיק כתמר יפרח, כארז בלבנון יסגה. צדיק כתמר יפרח, כארז בלבנון יסגה. צדיק כתמר יפרח, כארז בלבנון יסגה. צדיק כתמר יפרח, כארז בלבנון יסגה.
Now, it's interesting, the psalm takes the date palm which is a plant that grows on the edge of the desert where there's an oasis, so very low land. And the seed area is in Lebanon, which is up on the mountaintops. So we have two ends of plants used to describe the person who is a righteous person. He flourishes, whether he's down in lowlands or up in the highlands. The righteous person flourishes. All right? We would hope so. We would hope so. We finally come to the most perfect fruit. The most perfect fruit is the one that doesn't exist. It's the one that we have to have in our imagination. No pit, no peel, no blemish, no imperfection. All right? That is the realm of the Godhead, the realm of the Kadosh Baruch Hu. All right? So we just have to imagine it with ways that we can't imagine. So it takes us to the Song of the Plant, written by Naomi Shemer, composed by Naomi Shemer, based on a song of Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav, great mystic, on the theme that every plant and every flower has a song to sing, and each and every shepherd has his own tune. You know that each and every grass has its own poem, and the poem of the grasses. And from this poem, a tune of a shepherd is made. How beautiful and pleasant to hear their poem. Very good to pray among them and serve the Lord in joy. And from the poem of the grasses, the heart is filled and yearns. And when the poem causes the heart to feel and to yearn to the land of Israel, a great light is drawn and goes to the land's holiness upon it. From the poem of the grasses, a tune of the heart is made. And this is Etienne Kari singing.
דע לך שכל רואה ורואה יש לו ניגון מיוחד משלו. דע לך שכל עשב ועשב יש לו שירה מיוחדת משלו, ומשירת העשבים נעשה ניגון של רועה. כמה יפה ונאה כששומעים השירה שלהם. טוב מאוד להתפלל ביניהם ובשמחה לעבוד את השם, ומשירת העשבים מתמלא הלב ומשתוקק. וכשהלב מן השירה מתמלא ומשתוקק אל ארץ ישראל. אור גדול אזי נמשך והולך מקדושתה של הארץ עליו, ומשירת העשבים נעשה ניגון של הלב, ומשירת העשבים נעשה ניגון של הלב.
As I mentioned, there were 4 cups of wine, so it would go from a white wine to a blush to a rosé, and then you'd go wrap up with a full-blown red, so it would be full, dark warmth of the summer. And so we conclude with another video of Israel. This one, Tu B'Shvat, Melodies and Plants of the Land. But when we do that, I think it's the song I actually showed you at the very beginning, but this is going to complete it. Story of the man who's walking along the road and he sees a certain man planting a carob tree. This man who is Honi, a great philosopher of his day, he said to him, "This tree, after all, how many years will it take to bear fruit?" And the man said to him, "It will not produce fruit until 70 years have passed." That's the time it takes for a carob tree to have good fruit. And Honi says to him, "It's obvious to you that you will live 70 years. Is it obvious? Would you expect to benefit from this tree?" And he said to him, "That man himself found a world full of carob trees. Just as my ancestors planted for me, I too am planting for my descendants." The metaphor being, we come into a world, the people before us did what they could to make it livable. Our job is to plant for the future generations. And as I say here, this is the, there we go. It's the video that I opened with. Enjoy.
ציפורים מראש כל גג מבשרות את בוא החג. ט"ו בשבט הגיע חג לאילנות, ט"ו בשבט הגיע חג לאילנות. הארץ משוועת, הגיע עת לטעת, כל אחד ייקח לו עץ, בעצים נצא חוצץ. ט"ו בשבט הגיע חג לאילנות, ט"ו בשבט הגיע חג לאילנות. השקדיה פורחת ושמש פזורחת, ציפורים מראש כל גג מבשרות את בוא החג. ט"ו בשבט הגיע חג לאילנות, ט"ו בשבט הגיע חג לאילנות.
Okay, so that takes us to the end of our presentation for this Shabbat. Next week, I'm going to jump ahead 2 weeks from now. It falls on the weekend of the anniversary of our 100th year official founding. In other words, actually, Hollywood Temple Bethel as a congregation was in operation for some time before, but they officially founded themselves, had their first place officially on January 26, 1920. How many? It's 100 years from now? 22. Yeah, right. 100 years ago. So I have Rabbi Cutler, Jerry Cutler, a dear friend, who will come on and tell us stories about people in Hollywood that he's worked with, people that made life happy and good for us, and some of the cute stories that he has. Later on, because we're in our 100th year, I'm going to try to get themes that match it. Jews in Hollywood, Jewish films, greatest Jewish films, greatest Israeli films. Let's see when we get back to being able to meet in person, maybe we can run a film night or something like that also, because that's part of what really got us starting way back when. Next week, just before the International Holocaust Commemoration, and I'm going to think of something appropriate with that also for that time. And then if you have any other themes or topics, just run them by me, email them to me also for the following weeks. I have the possibility to run a course on basic Judaism. I got a very nice outline from the people that have helped us with some other projects like the one on Jewish history. So I may throw that one in, and maybe we can alternate some of these themes. So anybody want to wave their hand or say anything?
Rabbi,
Go ahead.
I have something. Riva just told me something. A man went into a synagogue in Texas today and took some hostages.
Where?
In Texas. I don't know where in Texas.
Didn't say we're in Texas. Oh my gosh, we have family in Texas, in Houston.
I know.
Fort Worth.
Oh, Fort
In Fort Worth. Some of the family in Fort Worth. Wow. Yes, in there. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Yeah. There's something, and they think that that'll solve our problems, right? Just by taking out a few Jews. What can I tell you? All right. Never ending. Any other thoughts? Anybody have a happier thought for us?
Oh, happier thought. I have today is my son's 60th birthday.
Was also to him. Hey, how is Helen doing?
She's doing okay. She's home already. I know.
She's getting
you
therapy
heard.
for her arm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that can be getting the arm and the shoulder work takes a long time.
I had to have a surgery in Mexico. That surgery on the shoulder, and then she got tested positive, so she had to quarantine.
Also.
Went to a Marriott hotel to quarantine, and finally got home Tuesday night.
Oh my gosh! Send her our regards. Send her a text. Send her our love, and I should have had her on our Mishaberach list.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tell her we wish her well and good recovery and full range of motion for the arm. I think I know it takes time.
Yes, finally got home.
Yeah. Okay. So to everybody, a good Shabbos.
Rabbi, a last question. Just
go ahead.
this week. How do the Orthodox count the Shemitah year? Because
this is the Shemitah year. Yeah.
And how can, because we know when in the year, but even though it's mentioned on the Bible, we don't know when they start the counting.
Yeah. Well, we know. I think what they did is that we know in the Second Temple times, they recorded when the Shemitah year was, and even after the temple fell, they kept on counting the years. So if I'm correct, we would have actually a fairly accurate count of the Shemitah year from Second Temple times. Can't say about First Temple times, but from Second Temple times. So I'm going to guess, and it's good looking into, that it's fairly correct This would be in that cycle. So Shemitah, it's interesting, there's Tu B'Shvat, so we talk about planting trees. Trees are not planted in the dead of the winter. Trees are planted at the end of the summer, beginning of the fall. That's the actual correct time in the land of Israel. But during the Shemitah year, you don't plant. And so there are classic 2 ways around it, or 3 ways around it. One is, like some of the very Orthodox communities don't plant and don't use anything grown inside the land of Israel. They will buy produce only grown outside of Israel. Then the classic approach that was instituted by Rav Kook, the first rabbi of the Yeshuv in the beginning of the last century, was to say that the Shemitah year, we are not completely sure if the Shemitah year is in effect because there's no temple standing. If that's the case, we can look for ways to work around it. And his solution was, well, just like for Pesach, we sell the chametz to a non-Jew. So in the Shemitah year, we sell the land, the agricultural land, to a non-Jew. And at the end of the Shemitah, you buy it back. Then what you are doing is you're planting on somebody else's land. And we said you could do it because, again, there's the question whether the Shemitah is actually legally in effect based on biblical law. And that was his argument. Another approach, third approach, which is original, was the Shemitah year is in effect about produce in the land. Or what about produce that's not grown on the land, like hydroponics? So some kibbutzim developed hydroponics as a solution. And that actually works very well, for example, with vegetables, herbs. You can grow them very nicely hydroponically. So there's that solution, right? Where there's a will, there's a workaround.
Rabbi, don't turn off just yet. Marcelo, take
Okay.
a look at the message I sent you.
Let me see. How did you send it?
You can't send. It's only to Marcelo.
Oh,
But you need this. We need to have the system. Just give him 10 seconds, and then he can get back to me later. You see it, Marcelo? That's all right. Don't worry. Go ahead. I'll send him again. I'll text him.
okay. Is it a comment for now or?
No. It's about something else.
Oh, okay. So that being the case, then let's wish everybody Shabbat Shalom.
But
And
shalom.
Everything good to everybody. Stay safe. I'm hoping. I mean, the presumption is that this wave will be peaking soon, and that's what the indications from South Africa and from the United Kingdom are so far. Seems to be indications in Israel the same thing, that it hits a peak. And then because it is such a comprehensive variation that it's on its surface, it has so many different kinds of crowds that it crowds out the possibility for other variations to come in. And hopefully that turns it into endemic rather than pandemic, something that will be around, but we'll be able to live with. That's our prayer. That's our prayer. To everybody, a good Shabbos.
Indeed.
Stay healthy.
Shabbos,
stay well.
everyone.
Shabbos, everyone.
Shabbos.
Shabbos.
Shabbos, everyone.